And we're pleased to be joined today on Telile 24/7 by the Conservative Party candidate for Cape Breton-Canso. She is no stranger to the workings of Ottawa, and now she is looking for your vote on Monday, September the 20th. Her name is Fiona MacLeod. Fiona, thank you for joining me on Telile 24/7 today.
Pleasure to be here, Adam. Thank you.
What has this experience been like for you? We're in the home stretch now, less than a week to go. What kind of reception do you feel you've gotten on the doorsteps and throughout the riding?
The people of Cape Breton-Canso are a very respectful group of people. They are politically engaged for the most part, and I'm truly proud of what I and my team have accomplished, but also have seen in the people of this riding. We've been around the entire riding at least twice in our RV, and there's so many great stories and personal interactions that will go down in the history books for sure. And it's been a great experience.
Fiona, I'm curious to note that you have many years of experience within the House of Commons in Ottawa, but by the same token, this is your first crack at elected politics. Why did you choose now to try for a federal seat?
I have always been interested in politics, going back to when I was a teenager. I was involved and active back then. And so really it was something I had on my radar. Maybe I might even say my bucket list, believe it or not. Some might think that's crazy to do. But I knew that, first of all, timing was really important. I worked for other women in government, in politics. And so, my children are in their 20s now. I needed to obviously fulfill that role as a mother without getting into the political fray. I thought that was extremely important. And as well, my husband was a policeman in Ottawa, even though he's from Dunvegan, and worked shift work. So it really was impossible for me personally to even think about anything like that before now. We're both retired. And I would say the other key element for me is that, frankly, I needed to be passionate about the community I represented. And there's no other community that really means more to me than the Cape Breton-Canso community. It's where our family's roots are. So the timing, as I said, was perfect because we're both retired and back here now.
So for those of our Telile viewers who might not know your experience that well, even at this stage of the campaign, I want to take a couple of moments to have you paint a picture of your experiences in our nation's capital. What can you tell me about the work you've done over the years, Fiona?
The duration of my career in Ottawa, 32 years, half of it was on the Hill, working for members of parliament and cabinet ministers and laterally senators. And then the other half, which was 17 years, was in the public service. So I had that balance of understanding the parliamentary system as well as the public service bureaucracy process that supports the parliamentary system or the government of the day's agenda.
Given that you're running for the Conservatives, Fiona, I think some of our Telile viewers might be surprised to know that you have some insider experience working with the Liberal government of Justin Trudeau over the past 6 years. Specifically, you have some insight on the Liberal government's decision to place an Ontario MP, Navdeep Bains, in charge of the Atlantic Canada Opportunities Agency. Can you tell us a little bit about your experiences there and what you learned from these experiences?
When I was at Industry Canada, which became Innovation, Science and Economic Development under Prime Minister Trudeau in 2016, was my role as ministerial liaison. Managed a team that worked closely with Minister Baines's office. And at that time, they changed the economic development agencies who were running individually, separately, independently under Minister Baines. And I did see firsthand the implications of that decision. From firstly, an operational perspective, it put an additional layer of bureaucracy on approvals of any economic development announcement. And then secondly, also, I observed the impact, especially in Atlantic Canada, of having a minister from Toronto overseeing that agency. Then the lateral experience was what I've been doing for the last 4 years as director of the Access to Information Policy team at the Treasury Board Secretariat. And in that role, I was responsible for overseeing a mandate commitment of Prime Minister Trudeau's from 2016, which was specifically the commitment to make government more open and transparent. And it started with the modernization of the Access to Information Act, which hadn't been touched since 1984. And that literally was a 4-year process. And I won't get into the details as such, but it was to amend legislation. Any government's responsibility to amend legislation is not an easy task. There's multiple steps. And so again, that experience when it comes to our leader, Aaron O'Toole's mandate that he expects to do includes just that, amending certain legislation. And so I'm well aware of the responsibility, importance, frankly, of a minister's office to really keep your department on their toes to make sure there's no delays in getting that process through. It's an onerous one, and obviously I saw it firsthand. So that would be to the benefit of this government as well.
What have people been saying to you as you've been going to different parts of the riding? Do you feel like there's one or two ballot questions for Cape Breton-Canso this time around? Or one or two things people keep bringing up? What are the things you're hearing?
Yeah, there's definitely the real concerns about our healthcare system and the real frustration in where we're at with our healthcare system and need to fix it. That's been a common theme everywhere. Then, in more rural areas, obviously, internet and cell phone service and the lack of strong, reliable service is a real hot topic as well. And, that impacts all society, right? It impacts the healthcare system. If you need to call for an ambulance, if there's an accident, if you need to take online training, and for businesses as well. So that is a big one. And it also impacts families that want to move here and set up their own home businesses. COVID has certainly opened our eyes to that capacity. And the reality is these people want to move to the rural parts of the riding, and it's an impediment. I would say finally, the real other frustration across the island has been with the lack of capacity to hire people this summer for businesses. It's just, it's really been super challenging. Students have benefited, but once they're gone, as you would probably know, businesses have had to shut until they regrouped and found more staff.
Healthcare concerns are obviously a big issue here in the Strait of Canso, and I'm wondering, Fiona, if there are any other parts of the Conservative platform that you feel specifically target Richmond County, Port Hawkesbury, and the general Strait area.
So we do have specific initiatives that support Port Hawkesbury and the area in particular's interest in developing more affordable housing. And one that comes to mind is, what federal buildings do we have in the areas that could be released? So we're committing to releasing 15% of federal properties for development in the local areas. And I would also say, because I know personally of families that are taking care of seniors at home, And so we are going to increase funding to family members that are taking care of other family members that are over 70. So, with the goal in mind of keeping people, allowing people to stay at home as long as possible before going into some type of supported care.
Fiona, I'm curious from a political perspective. It's been said more than once that the Nova Scotia Progressive Conservative Party isn't along the same ideological lines as the Conservative Party of Canada. Even Premier Tim Houston himself has said that a few times during the recent provincial campaign. That being said, the provincial election has been compared to this federal election in that a Liberal incumbent called an election while leading in the polls and then found out that the campaign actually matters and that people have issues far, far different from what they might feel they might have, and they might have more of an appetite for change. So, does it put wind in your sails, A, that the PC Party of Nova Scotia won a majority government as the federal election had started? It had only been a few days, but that so many PC MLAs were elected in Cape Breton Island, and all four of the MLAs representing the Strait of Canso area. Did that buoy your campaign and that of your campaign workers as you got going?
I would say, what puts the wind in my sails is actually getting out the door and talking to people and getting positive feedback. It's there's actually, there's no doubt that there's the results of the provincial campaign certainly was positive from a conservative's perspective. Time will tell, really, whether or not the fallout is, a positive one for me personally, politically. But at the end of the day, it's really interesting because it's my first time as a candidate, but you can, get buried in the operational process of a campaign quite easily, I've noticed. But getting out the door and actually going door knocking and talking to people is really where the rubber hits the road, and you really get a sense of feel of what people are thinking about and whether it's a positive energy out there or not. And I would say it leans to a positive energy out there. And whether or not it's a result of the provincial election results, I will leave for others to figure out.
You talked just a moment ago about what's involved in getting out and knocking on doors. Were there any surprises for you in this campaign, positive or otherwise?
I wouldn't say there's surprises, but learning, it's been a real education for me to really hear how concerned people are with certain aspects of their own experience that links to federal policy. Spent quite a bit of time in the Inverness Manor and speaking to nurses and support care workers there. And, from an EI perspective, what they had to say was really enlightening. I'll say that, in terms of what their hourly rates are and, how the balance of that with other jobs and seasonal work and the need for more people in their industry. I've really learned a lot from learning directly from those who are experiencing challenges in their lines of work.
We're in the home stretch here, Fiona. I just had one more question for you, and I'm curious about what motivates you and who or what inspires you during a campaign like this. I mean, obviously, it's a long stretch for you to be out hitting the road, as it is the case with any candidate, but is there anyone or anything that really motivates you and keeps you going, especially as you're heading into the final days of the campaign?
I really, it's the people you meet and the stories you hear, and you're thinking, gosh, I want to help. It's the constituents themselves and their own personal stories, and you don't forget them. And I'm a pretty pragmatic, methodical person, so I can see myself already creating lists of people I've met and issues that have been raised that need to be looked at and monitored and and demonstrate where the improvements have been. That is definitely something top of mind. For example, I have met with many people linked and involved in the fishing community. And I realized, my goodness, we have dredging issues, we have breakwater issues, and we have wharf issues with those wharfs that were divested years ago and in need of repairs. I think I need to do a mass audit, if elected, of what exactly are all of those wharfs and breakwaters and dredging needs, and figure it out with the community, how over a 4-year period we can work towards addressing them in a methodical way. They all can't be fixed all at the same time, but there has to be an approach that is methodical and delivers some results in those areas.
We've covered a lot of ground in a short time, Fiona, as I thought we might. Just want to ask if you have anything else you'd like to add to the conversation before we wrap up here.
Simply get out and vote, everybody. I think it's really important to exercise your right to vote. And so if you haven't already, do so on September 20th. And if anybody needs help getting to the polls, reach out to your respective campaigns, mine in particular, where we're available. So if you still want to vote and need help, just reach out.
It has been a pleasure to talk to you this morning, Fiona. Thank you so much for giving me a few moments on Telile 24/7, and good luck with the rest of the campaign.
Thanks, Adam. Great to talk. Bye-bye.
Fiona MacLeod is the Conservative candidate for Cape Breton-Canso. We've been speaking to her from her office in Reserve Mines via Zoom.